Hi, welcome to Bar Cart Bookshelf, a video series about books and the drinks they inspire. My name is Elias, and it's October 1st. And you know what that means. It's the start of spooky season here on Bar Cart Bookshelf. Here we are in year 4, taking our annual look, month-long look, at all things horror, spooky. We read some horror and we read some spooky things through the year, certainly, but there is no month like October to spend 5, that's right, this week, 5 wonderful weeks looking at things that go bump in the night and bump in the club, as in this week's novel. Our book this week is Red X by David Demchuk, and I'm so excited that we can kick off our spooky season calendar and menu with Red X, because it is a book that has been on my shelf for a long minute. I think I snagged it in February of 2023, so last year, at the wonderful horror bookstore here in Louisville, Kentucky. Definitely a place worth checking out if you're passing through or you live in the Louisville area, Butcher Cabin Books. And the time was not right for Red X on Bar Cart Bookshelf until now. And now it was the right time. Oh, yes, indeed. So, Red X is a Canadian, Toronto set horror novel about a series of disappearances in the sort of gay neighborhood, the gayborhood of Toronto. It is a story that takes place over the course of about 32 or so years, peeking in at different overlapping characters. It's structurally a very interesting book. It has interludes of memoir and essay. It has some really fun stylistic things. If you're interested in the stylistic voice choices in The Saint of Bright Doors, for example, then I think you're going to find some things that you enjoy in Red X. It has that auto-fictive quality that I really enjoy, and I think lends a more tangible and a more palpable feeling to the horror elements. This idea that in horror, unlike in fantasy, the darkness is not something that you can necessarily overcome. Certainly, you can organize yourself around it and array yourself in opposition to it, but there's a lure of the darkness, and there's an incomprehensibility in a way that our other subgenres don't really play with quite so much. And Red X does that to really tremendous effect. It's a book that is chilling, it's dark, it's mournful, but it's also joyous. It is about people who you can see have found happiness and comfort in their lives as we sort of see them at different points along the way, and who in the midst of darkness find success and sorrow in equal measure. It is a powerful metafictional novel, and one that I highly, highly recommend. And so, of course, we had to have a drink for it. Our drink this episode is the Book of Shades. It's inspired by both the sort of milieu of the novel and then specifically a sort of magical object that appears and reappears across the narrative, this tattered red notebook that contains spells and memories and poems and all of these things in different languages, and bears the marks of all who have come before. It's very spooky, but also compelling sort of notebook. And we're going to start with 1.5 ounces of rye whiskey, because it's fall, and for me, fall is all about rye whiskey. This is a base spirit that, of course, we used last week with a very different book, The Naming Song, and which we used for Sam J. Miller's really exquisite horror novel, queer horror novel, The Blade Between, 2 years ago. We're going to get 1.5 ounces of that in there. The Blade Between and Red X, both read books, both books about queer men. Very different books, but books that work really well if you're reading them and thinking about them together. It came out at about the same time. They're thinking about some similar ideas, overlapping ideas, but where The Blade Between is this really sort of character-focused, direct narrative. Red X has a more mosaical, prismatic quality to it, but both really excellent books that I think work well in conversation with one another, and drinks that work well in conversation with one another. So we've got our 1.5 ounces of rye whiskey. This one's going to be one that packs a punch, because then we're going to get 1/2 ounce of sweet vermouth. Going to be that red, that darkness, that sort of herbal quality that we get from the wonderful Carpano Antica. Love that. And then yet more red, because we've got to have the red. And we're going to bring a bit of berry brightness with 1/2 ounce of raspberry liqueur. Beautiful. Rich, red, deep and dark. And then for a bit of zing, we're going to get some lemon juice in there. 1/2 ounce of lemon juice. Perfect. Get our ice down in there. Don't worry, we're coming back for our Angostura bitters. And then, once we've got our ice, we'll shake it up, wake it up. There we go, nice, frosty, freezy. Make sure you don't slip on the ice or come into an electrified wire frozen in ice. It's like a new thing that I didn't know to be afraid of, but apparently in Toronto it is something that you have to worry about. Not so much here in Kentucky. We've got different scares, though, you know, some of these polar vortexes. We're going to strain that into a highball glass. Beautiful. Oh, it smells so good. It smells very full. And then, as you can see, we've still got plenty of space. Sort of rusty red, more of that, like, dried blood quality, which feels very apropos for the novel. And we'll get this into here, just top with that ginger ale, very appropriately, Canada Dry this episode. Though, of course, you know, use any ginger ale that you like. I'm gonna let those bubbles settle, and then get a little bit more in there. Ooh, little froth, little foam over, that's okay. I mean, it means I'm going to have to do some cleanup, but that's okay. And then we're going to crown with Angostura bitters. We're going to get a few dashes in there, just to be a little bit of darkness bleeding through into our, there we go, nice and dark in there, bleeding through into the rest of our cocktail. You can see how it filters down into the depths of the drink, adding that extra bit of richness and darkness into there. And so there you have it. This is the Book of Shades inspired by Red X by David Demchuk. Red X is available now. I've got a link to snag it in the description down below. It is one of the books that I have been most excited to talk about, and one that I am so excited that we have finally gotten to cover here on Bark Heart Bookshelf. I really think that if you're a fan of the books we talk about here, you're going to get a kick out of this one. I've got a link to snag it in the description below. Got links to various forms of social media, including Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, where there is always a written version of today's recipe. Got a link to purchase my book, Cocktails and Consoles, 75 Cocktails and Mocktails Inspired by the Wonderful World of Video Games. You can level up your game night with that. Hit that like button. It makes me so happy when you do. Subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss a single moment of our wonderful Halloween spooky season content coming at you this month. Try the drink. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And until next time, cheers.